This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Russini Report on the Athletic Football Show. I am Robert Mays. Joining me today, it is the Athletic Senior NFL Insider, Dianna Russini. Dianna, how are you?
Good, really good. It's been an exciting 2 weeks of football. I felt like last night the games were slow, right? I just felt like they were just crawling, but I'll take that any day of the week. I hate waking up on a Tuesday knowing we don't have anything. We gotta just talk about all this now.
Unfortunately, we have some bad news to talk about today after those games last night. A really tough moment for the Browns, for anyone watching that broadcast, for anyone who I think enjoys great players in the NFL. Nick Chubb goes down with a serious leg injury. News comes out today that he is going to be out for the season, undergo surgery. What is just the feeling in that building right now after enduring everything last night? I know what Nick Chubb means not only to that team, but to that locker room and to that organization.
Yeah, there's obviously two sides to this. It's Nick Chubb, the person, and you. The amount of people that reached out on the professional level around the league, you saw all the tweets on social media. Besides just that running back group, you just saw superstar players all concerned, and that's just a reflection of the high character that Nick Chubb has, and really how well liked he is around the league. Now, in terms of the offense and what this is going to mean, just talking to some people in the building today. Look, they're coming off a loss, on top of the fact that they just lost perhaps their most important player, and we'll say just after their quarterback. It's they're a little dull today for sure, and obviously crushed from that standpoint. But they also know they have a lot of work to do in trying to figure out what this offense is going to be now that the centerpiece of it is no longer on the roster.
Kevin Stefanski came out today and said that Jerome Ford would be the featured guy now that Nick Chubb is out. What do you think the running back room will look like moving forward? Is this a situation where Kareem Hunt could come back? Would they look on the veteran market? What do you think that group looks like for the rest of the season without Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I can tell you they're actually doing that right now. They're doing the work on trying to figure out how they're going to fill a roster spot there at the running back position, knowing what Stefanski likes to do, which he's got to run the ball, whether Nick Chubb is going to be there or not, right? That's the nucleus of what this is supposed to look like. And you're right. Jerome Ford, just as a backup and now stepping in as the main back, looks like he can handle it. This offensive line is so stout and so well coached that this is why this becomes so important to them. This loss isn't as gutting as we've seen around the league with other significant injuries. I'm not taking away from how important Nick Chubb is. He is. Just recently talking to Cincinnati about how they were going to approach that game. It was stop Nick Chubb. I mean, it was as simple as that. But knowing that Stefanski likes the run, play action, quarterback naked, just the way they built this. And knowing what Deshaun Watson looks like right now, which I can tell you in the building, they feel he looks rusty.
I was going to ask you, without Nick Chubb, now the struggles of the quarterback become even more important. So how worried are they about the way that he's played over the first couple of days? Because my thought coming into the season was it can't be as bad as it was last year. And through 2 games, it's about as bad as it was last year.
Mm-hmm. But the strength is going to be running with play action. So I don't think they change the identity of what they're going to do and what they're going to be because they just lost Chubb. I think they just are going to continue to run the ball and make it work with how they view this offense and what the strength is, and try to get Watson back up to what we've seen. And I do think this is going to be the question that surrounds this team until we start seeing more than 1 or 2 plays a game that make us all go, okay, it's there. There's Deshaun. There's the 2019. But the word rusty was the way it was described to me, by someone who's been around him.
The Steelers are lucky that the Browns offense is struggling in the way that it has, or there would be a lot more attention on them today and the offensive performance that they put up. They were arguably the worst offense in football from a success rate down in and down out perspective in week 2. Any rumblings about what the future looks like with Matt Canada after all of their struggles offensively this year, and then the offense not taking a step forward with Kenny Pickett and that group in year 2 so far?
Yeah, well, I'll just start with the player perspective. There's definitely some frustration. That is for sure. But in terms of making any significant changes, especially in September, for a Steelers organization that historically has never made big moves, it wouldn't make any sense. They're not going to change how they've conducted business over the years. But I do think that they know that it has to be better. This isn't one of those scenarios where they're making excuses because they don't see the problem. They see there's a problem. They also think some of the players need to step up and play better as well. I think we're having a lot of conversations about different teams right now. Is the quarterback play to blame? Is it the coordinator, right? And it is really hard at times to decipher it. But I think in this scenario, I do think it's both. I think it's both pieces need to improve and get better, get on the same page. And the good news is we're only in week 3 here, right? It's always mucky right now. It's never good football. So let's see if we're having this conversation after Halloween.
Let's stick with running back injuries. The other notable one from this week, Saquon Barkley going down with an ankle injury that not as serious as it might have looked in the moment. You reported yesterday that Saquon was actually week to week and might be able to play sooner than the initial reports seemed to indicate. Where are we at with Saquon Barkley and even his availability for this Thursday against the Niners?
Saquon is so determined to get back on the field. And historically, though, when you take a look back at some of his injuries, we've seen that coming back too soon does not work out for him, right? In most players, that's not the smartest way to play it. That being said, do I think there's some gamemanship here from head coach Brian Daboll today saying that they're going to go day by day here and see how he feels on Thursday morning? I think there's a little gamemanship there for sure. But I don't need to tell those out there that are listening or watching that Saquon Barkley is a freak in the best way possible. And I know he's getting treatment and taking care of it to try to see how much pressure weight he could put on it. And if he is even able to have any movement and some fluidity there. So look, with sprains like this, it's usually the swelling that's the problem. And then you have to deal with all that. So we will see. The door is open. I would be shocked. But I'm sure we've seen crazier things. But the fact that he's week to week, I think that's actually really good news, considering that I think initially some people thought it would be at least 3 weeks to a month.
The 4-day turnaround makes it difficult, but it does seem possible that we might see him as soon as week 4. And that didn't feel like it was on the table at all when you watched his reaction to the injury initially.
Yeah. And you want to talk about being tired? You talk to that Giants locker room. You talk to that Giants staff. They're tired. And it has nothing to do with traveling out west. It has everything to do with what that game was and the emotional toll that takes when you're fighting as hard as they were fighting. I'm working on a story right now and I'm trying to get it. And I don't know if I'm going to have success, but I want to know what Brian Daboll said at halftime. It hasn't come out yet. No one really shared what the messaging was. Was it angry? Was it love? Did he put music on? What did he do? Right? Did he take over the play calling? I just think there's so many little stories from that game that I hope come to light soon, and we're working on it. But with that in mind, playing in a game with so much emotion, fighting to get back in it, coming out with a win, losing Saquon, staying in Arizona, practicing, then heading out to California to face perhaps the best team in football, or at least one of the top teams in football right now. This is going to be a really big challenge for the New York Giants.
Giants avoided going 0-2 with that miraculous second half comeback. The Bengals do sit at 0-2, and their status and the quarterback status being a huge conversation point early this week, rightfully so. What is the latest on Joe Burrow's calf and when we might see him and in what shape we might see him?
Yeah, I'm sensing there's concern in the building just about how long this is going to go for. There's obviously concern in the interim where they play on Monday night, right? This is a re-injured calf injury that, as Joe even said, is sore. He's obviously getting the treatment, doing everything he can to try to get ready, but it's a definite, there's a question mark right now whether or not he is going to be ready to go and able to play in this game. And then obviously you turn the page here and go, okay, well, how long will this take? Because we know how difficult actually calf injuries can be. I've interviewed so many players over the years about it because I do find it such an interesting injury, interesting from a space of you can't really put a timestamp on it. There's no concrete, this takes 4 days. Everyone's body reacts differently. And depending on the severity of that pull or of the strain, excuse me. So look, I'm sure there are people in that building wondering if maybe they rolled this out a little too soon, right? The play has not been remarkable at all, right? The timing is off with Joe and his receivers, as it should be. He missed preseason. Recently I talked to Joe's dad, Jimmy Burrow, about just the contract scenario and everything that's been going on with Joe. And he was the one who pointed it out to me. And I know we talk about it at length, the value of a preseason for quarterbacks specifically, and getting that timing with their receivers and just kicking out the rust. His dad really shed a lot of light about how Joe has missed every preseason, right? COVID, appendix, knee, calf. He's never had one. And here we are again with the Bengals coming out to a slow start.
The difference is from there and early, all the other preseasons that he missed, the trajectory was always pointed up. He was going to get healthier. He was going to get those time with those guys. This feels different because we don't know what the outlook is. It doesn't necessarily look like that arrow was pointed the same way because the calf might linger for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the entire season. So even if there might be optimism based on how the Bengals seasons have gone in years past, this does feel like it's a different challenge that they're facing down.
Who knew? Jamar Chase, the doctor, he was the one who said it. Sit out to week 5. We don't need you. We'll figure it out. Rest it, because everyone knows when you re-aggravate it, you're just pushing the ball up the hill, right? And you're not helping your cause at all. So, they're going to probably have to find the balance between practicing some patience with it and probably fighting the player too, who Joe wants to get back out there. And look, he doesn't share a lot in press conferences. If we all listen to them all the time. He's pretty bland and he does it on purpose. But he said, like, when your quarterback doesn't play a preseason, he shed that light, right? Because that means that he knows this is not crisp because he just hasn't had the time. And maybe you can find some hope in that, and maybe with some time. But if you're not out there, then the time just keeps going down. And then before you know, we're November and the Bengals don't look like they're going to be making the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a level of urgency here with them being 0-2. You can't really afford to be patient in the AFC and in the AFC North, where Baltimore looks pretty darn good right now. Joe Burrow gets paid on the eve of the season, becoming the highest paid player in the league. And I assume the best player in the league had his eye on that deal and some of the other contracts that have been handed out over the last few months at the position. Patrick Mahomes restructures his contract. His new deal gives him $208.1 million between 2023 and 2026. Why that's important is that Lamar Jackson was slated to make $208 million over that stretch. So $100,000 more for Patrick Mahomes. Moves the money up in a way where he gets a $48 million raise over that 4-year stretch, but the contract still goes the same length. My question for you here is mostly, why now? Why was this the moment where the Chiefs felt like it was important to revisit Mahomes' deal, alter it in a way that kind of brought it up to the times with the current quarterback market?
Because it was his birthday. Because we said, we need to give you a really good gift, right? I mean, some gift that is. Look, you look around the league and you see all the top quarterbacks getting paid. And after every single quarterback gets paid, the next sentence that usually comes out of talk show hosts' mouths and analyst mouths is, and Patrick Mahomes is still underpaid, right? So if most of us are saying it, could you imagine what he's saying in his head for everything that he has accomplished? So the relationship between his camp and the Chiefs has always been really strong and really good. And they've always communicated, and they communicated all of last year, even leading up to the Super Bowl, right? So they hadn't even won yet, just during that whole season of last year, just having that, hey, we're going to have to do this. We want to do this. And the Chiefs were aware that they need to do this. So in terms of a negotiation, this seemed, from what I can gather after having a few conversations this morning, like it was a pretty smooth negotiation. But once you saw these guys get paid, the other quarterbacks around the league, it was time for Patrick to get his.
It seems like it's a mutually beneficial conclusion to reach. The Chiefs are happy because these cap numbers are still going to be tolerable. It's not going to hamstring them over these 3 or 4 years. Mahomes is happy because he gets a deal commensurate with his play. And then in 2026, when this 4-year stretch ends, it sounds like they will revisit his deal, the market, and what things need to look like moving forward. And all things considered, I think that's a pretty good spot for both parties to land.
Yeah, I did have some people ask me, actually, it was like, oh, does this mean he's not locked in to Kansas City now for, the next, 8-10 years? I said, no, that's not the case. He's just going to get another bite at the apple, essentially, with the team after 4 years. So he's going to be in Kansas City the rest of his career. It's just the amount of money he's going to make is probably going to be outrageous and deservingly so.
Let's chat about the team the Chiefs are playing this week, and that is the Chicago Bears. Another nightmarish performance from the Bears offense in week 2 against the Bucs. Things are getting real anxious over here in the Chicagoland area. I can tell you that right now. I want to go outside of how things feel locally, though, and I want to get your insight on the conversations you've had with people around the league about Justin Fields this week. As you've kind of solicited opinions from coaches, people around the NFL, how are they feeling about the way that Justin Fields and that Chicago offense have looked 2 weeks in?
Well, I would like to just start with the conversation I had with Todd Bowles on Sunday morning before kickoff, when I asked him what he had in mind, or at least how were they game planning against Justin Fields, knowing what we saw against Green Bay didn't really look like what we expected from a quarterback with supposedly a better defense. We know how much money they put into it. With
those quotes are carrying a lot of weight.
with a better receiver, potentially a better offensive line. So, all right, well, what is this going to be? Are you looking to stop, a pocket passer type of quarterback? And Bowles kind of laughed at me like, no. The Justin Fields we saw last year, those quarterback design, the running around, using his athleticism, his strong arm, stretching the field, we are ready for that. I mean, he played up this Chicago Bears offense as if you were going to see the Philadelphia Eagles from the Super Bowl. Like that is what it sounded like to me. I'm like, wow, like you have a lot of belief in this offense. And, we now, the game has passed, and we see, and we heard from the locker room, and we heard from Coach in his press conference specifically about what they did see, and it wasn't that. So I want to just start there with the fact that teams are also expecting, along with the fans, a certain type of offense, knowing how talented he is. I had one head coach this morning who was discussing with me. It was really me saying, what's wrong with Justin Fields is how I asked the question. He said, they need to use him like Cam Newton. That is the offense that they should be watching and apply it. And that's where they can at least find some identity here and get on the same page. Because right now, it doesn't look like they know who they want to be.
If you're trying to divvy up blame in the conversations that you've had, how much of this is on the structure of the offense? How much of this is on Justin Fields? What is the consensus that you've gotten from people thus far?
Again, this is the topic right now, week 2, right? Is it the quarterback or is it the offensive coordinator? And this is one of those where I'm getting a little bit more scheme, more play calling, more, you look at DJ Moore. Yeah, the targets went up slightly this week, but why is Chase Claypool getting more targets at this point? You have DJ Moore on your team. So I think there's definitely some creativity that needs to happen here, and some risk, right? I think it's scary to unleash. And you heard Justin talk about it last week about being too conservative, and he was criticizing himself, and he's so good at taking the blame and trying to improve. But what comes with changing the style of play from being conservative to putting it all out there, that's a scary place to be if you don't feel ready for it. And if you're not getting that support internally. And I think this is where the Bears have to figure out right now, are we unleashing? Are we going to let Justin be Justin? Or are we going to try to make him this pocket passing quarterback that I don't think that plays into his strengths. I don't think it's a smart way to play it.
Let's stick with quarterback existential angst here and get into a question that it feels like we're going to be asking every week as long as they're playing this way. And let's check in on the Jets quarterback situation. Another rough one for Zach Wilson against a very good Cowboys defense. What does the Jets plan feel like moving forward with Wilson and that quarterback room in general after what we've seen so far?
Well, officially not Tom Brady. Tom Brady came out saying, the Jets have not called me, I'm done. That would have been so fun and probably the most incredible story to cover. And I'm really upset that it is a big fat no. I think the Jets they're combing the veteran free agent market right now. I don't think they're going in for some big splash name. Colt McCoy is on their radar. They did have a conversation with Chad Henne. Chad decided to stay retired. He and I talked a little bit about it, and just, I was curious, why would you not want to do it, right? Like, this is a quarterback who we've seen have some success. He can step in. And I think it was a timing thing. He's like, it's early in the season here in terms of training. A lot comes with it. But I did think it was really interesting in speaking with Chad and Colt that the Jets shared that Zach Wilson's a starter. You are not coming in here to take the starting position. It's not an open competition. Could it go that way? Yes. But I thought that was really significant that the Jets, what they're saying to us is also what they're saying to a potential quarterback to come into New York. So I think we'll hear about a quarterback signing probably this week, if not next. And it wouldn't be shocking if it was Colt.
What do you think it says about the Jets and their urgency that they're mostly looking for street veteran free agents to be backups and not combing the trade market for potential starters or potential competition?
Yeah, I think you have to give a little credit to Zach, first of all. I think he has shown something to them in the building, in the meeting rooms, in the locker room. He's really, really had a glow up in terms of the likability factor, right? This is the same team that was rocking Mike White t-shirts last year when their starting quarterback was benched and White went on that electrifying run, right? So that's a hard right turn to me. I know I would feel strange as the starting quarterback knowing that these guys were all not against me, but they were really all in on the other guy. So the fact that he was able to, I think, bounce back, and I really truly admired that from an outside perspective, being at Jets camp all summer. This is really cool to see somebody able to embrace this show of Aaron Rodgers coming in here. And obviously he's his idol and he's looked up to him, but also to be open to learn. And that's what I think has happened. And I think Aaron Rodgers had such a strong effect on Zach Wilson in as a coach, forget even just being the teammate, as a coach, that it instilled confidence. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers is not here right now, right? So he doesn't have that voice in his head helping him along. And Rodgers is staying in touch with them. They FaceTimed a little bit last week. But really, you have Nathaniel Hackett, who doesn't have a relationship with Zach Wilson. And you have Todd Downing, who was the former I guess he was on the offensive staff in Tennessee. So you have him going from there. So they don't have a strong, deep relationship, but Downing is really known around the building as someone who can form great relationships with players. So I know that he is an advocate of Zach Wilson as well. So you have all these great factors, and I get why the Jets are going, this is our best shot. This guy knows us. He knows the team. He knows who we are, what we're about. And I don't know, Robert, I'll ask you, is there a part of this? Is there an Aaron Rodgers factor to this, that Aaron took time and took Zach under his wing, that the Jets feel like maybe they want to make this work to appease Aaron as well, to say, look, this was one of your projects and we're going to see this through.
That might be part of it. My biggest question is what happens at the end of the year? If this team is 6-11 because Zach Wilson is playing the type of quarterback we've seen him play over his entire career, this is a bottom 5 offense as a result of that. What does that mean for Robert Saleh and for Joe Douglas? Because there was so much urgency coming into the year, but can they just go to ownership and simply say, we didn't have Aaron. We were supposed to have this guy. We didn't have him. We will have him next year. Let us see this through. That to me is the biggest set of factors that you have to weigh. Is it we're trying to be a little bit more aggressive to go get a quarterback that could potentially salvage your season, or does this season not really need salvaging when you consider all of the context around the way that this roster was built?
I don't know of a conversation that was had or a meeting with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh and ownership that went along the lines of, okay, look, we know what we've got here. Let's get through the year. Let's try to get through the year healthy, make an effort, but we know that this is about next year for us. You guys are safe. Let's just now keep this in mind. I have had conversations in the past with coaches and owners who have had those conversations during the year and say, you are safe, you are safe, you are safe, and they still get fired. In fact, it happened in New York. It happened in New York with Brett Favre and Eric Mangini. So it's a great example of, even if Robert Saleh was told all is good, who knows? Because I can tell you, as somebody that lives in the New York area, the pressure of these fans, the pressure of the media here already after the Sunday performance has been bonkers, because the hope was just, the optimism was just so high, and the roller coaster has been so wild for 8 days now. And I think everyone is settling in here going, this isn't going to be good. But for now, the Jets believe Zach Wilson's the guy. And I don't really believe, not I don't really, but I don't sense, Robert, that they're going to go out there and make a trade to try to see if they can patchwork this until Aaron gets back.
When they're 0-4, maybe their tune changes about that. I think that's something worth monitoring. Again, considering the urgency, considering the dynamics around what we expect from that team coming into the season. Last one to hit here very quickly. Cam Akers was inactive last week, and it really does seem like the issues between him and the Rams have kind of bubbled back to the surface after all of that tension that they had last year. What is currently happening with Cam Akers, the Rams organization, and how things move going forward? Because Sean McVay came out last week and said, there will not be an opportunity for him here if we can't find a trade partner. So it seems like this has kind of reached the end of the line between Cam Akers and the Rams overall.
Yeah, there's no turning back. There's no text you up. This is it. And I started to hear some whispers about this last week, actually. And I was told that Sean had a conversation with him on the field after practice on Friday, and let him know that his fit with this team doesn't work, and he doesn't fit. The personality in the locker room isn't in sync with what they expect from their players. And this isn't even a type of organization, by the way, that has some very high standard of discipline and I don't want to say mental toughness, but just the bar's not that high. I just don't think this has worked well from a personality standpoint, mixing with what McVay wants to do and what he expects from these players. This is a team that I don't believe thought they were going to have the success that they've had already. And I'm not saying that they doubted themselves. No team is ever going to come out and admit that they were, but I can tell you from the conversations I had there, they didn't have such high hopes for the year. So I think now that they see they got something good, right? They've got potential here. There's no reason to hold on to perhaps warts that could create problems later on in the season.
With him very available right now, Cam Akers, is anyone potentially interested in making a move for him when you look at some of the running back injuries that have happened around the league?
Yeah, teams are definitely making calls, but there's also a lot of information out there right now that teams know of, right? They know if McVay and the Rams are moving on from him for reasons outside of football, perhaps, then there's a team that is in need. We'll just say, for example, the Ravens, right? They're having so much success right now. They have an incredible locker room. Incredible. Do you want to bring that in? So I think in the end here, he's going to probably wind up getting cut. But the Rams are going to try to do anything to get something in return.
We'll see if he lands anywhere. But like you said, everyone knows the information out there, and he hasn't been effective when given opportunities. Even in week 1, Kyren Williams was the better back, and I think that probably factors into some of the Rams' decision-making here, and other teams have to be aware of that. Dianna Russini, thank you very, very much. Always great to chat with you. We'll be doing this every single week here live on YouTube. We'll chat with you very soon.
Thanks. See you next week.